Welcome to BeFM Drama, where we turn great works of English literature into gripping radio. I'm your host, Joshua Cornwell, and on today's episode we're bringing you part 1 in our 5-part adaptation of The Missing Three-Quarter, a classic Sherlock Holmes mystery from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle that concerns the disappearance of a highly skilled rugby player from his hotel the day before a vital game. As our story begins, the mysterious circumstances surrounding the disappearance of the player pull Sherlock Holmes and his companion Dr. Watson out of their boredom and onto the case with the arrival of an urgent telegram. We were fairly accustomed to receive weird telegrams at Baker Street, but I have a particular recollection of one which reached us on a gloomy February morning some 7 or 8 years ago, and gave Mr. Sherlock Holmes a puzzled quarter of an hour. It was addressed to him and ran thus: "Please await me. Terrible misfortune. Right wing 3/4 missing. Indispensable tomorrow. Overton." Holmes read the message over and over.
Strand postmark and dispatch 10:36. Mr. Overton was evidently considerably excited when he sent it, and somewhat incoherent in consequence. Well, he will be here, I dare say, by the time I have looked through the Times, and then we shall know all about it. Even the most insignificant problem would be welcome in these stagnant days.
Things had indeed been very slow with us, and I had learned to dread such periods of inaction, for I knew by experience that my companion's brain was so abnormally active that it was dangerous to leave it without material upon which to work. For years, I had gradually weaned him from the mania which had once threatened to check his remarkable career, but I was well aware that the fiend was not dead but sleeping, and I have known that the sleep was a light one, and the waking near, when in periods of idleness I have seen the drawn look upon Holmes's ascetic face, and the brooding of his deep-set and inscrutable eyes. Therefore I blessed this Mr. Overton, whoever he might be, since he had come with his enigmatic message to break that dangerous calm which brought more peril to my friend than all the storms of his tempestuous life. As we had expected, the telegram was soon followed by its sender, and the card of Mr. Cyril Overton, Trinity College, Cambridge, announced the arrival of an enormous young man, 16 stone of solid bone and muscle, who spanned the doorway with his broad shoulders and looked from one of us to the other with a comely face which was haggard with anxiety.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes. I've been down to Scotland Yard, Mr. Holmes. I saw Inspector Stanley Hopkins. He advised me to come to you. He said the case, so far as he could see, was more in your line than in that of the regular police.
Pray, sit down and tell me what is the matter.
It's awful, Mr. Holmes, simply awful. I wonder, my hair isn't grey. Godfrey Staunton, you've heard of him, of course. He's simply the hinge that the whole team turns on. I'd rather spare 2 from the pack and have Godfrey for my 3/4 line. Whether it's passing or tackling or dribbling, there's no one to touch him. And then, he's got the head, and he can hold us all together. What am I to do? That's what I ask you, Mr. Holmes. There's Morehouse, first reserve, but he is trained as a half, and he always edges right in on the scrum instead of keeping out on the touchline. He's a fine place kick, it's true, but then he has no judgment, and he can't sprint for nuts. Why, Morton or Johnson, the Oxford Flyers could romp round him. Stevenson is fast enough, but he couldn't drop from the 25 line, and a 3/4 who can't either punt or drop isn't worth a place for pace alone. No, Mr. Holmes, we're done, unless you can help me find Godfrey Staunton.
My friend had listened with amused surprise to this long speech, which was poured forth with extraordinary vigor and earnestness, every point being driven home by the slapping of a brawny hand upon the speaker's knee. When our visitor was silent, Holmes stretched out his hand and took down letter S of his commonplace book. For once he dug in vain into that mine of varied information.
There is Arthur H. Staunton, the rising young forger, and there was Henry Staunton, whom I helped to hang, but Godfrey Staunton is a new name to me.
Why, Mr. Holmes? I thought you knew things. I suppose, then, if you have never heard of Godfrey Staunton, You don't know Cyril Overton either?
Holmes shook his head good-humoredly.
Great Scott! Why, I was first reserve for England against Wales, and I've skippered the varsity all this year. But that's nothing. I didn't think there was a soul in England who didn't know Godfrey Staunton, the crack three-quarter, Cambridge Blackheath, and 5 internationals. Good Lord, Mr. Holmes, where have you lived?
Holmes laughed at the young giant's naive astonishment.
You live in a different world to me, Mr. Overton, a sweeter and healthier one. My ramifications stretch out into many sections of society, but never, I am happy to say, into amateur sport, which is the best and soundest thing in England. However, your unexpected visit this morning shows me that even in that world of fresh air and fair play, there may be work for me to do. So now, my good sir, I beg you to sit down and tell me, slowly and quietly, exactly what it is that has occurred and how you desire that I should help you.
Young Overton's face assumed the bothered look of the man who is more accustomed to using his muscles than his wits. But by degrees, with many repetitions and obscurities which I may omit from his narrative, he laid his strange story before us.
It's this way, Mr. Holmes. As I have said, I'm the skipper of the rugger team of Cambridge Varsity, and Godfrey Staunton is my best man. Tomorrow we play Oxford. Yesterday, we all came up, and we settled at Bentley's private hotel. At 10 o'clock, I went round and saw that all the fellows had gone to roost, for I believe in strict training and plenty of sleep to keep a fit team. I had a word or two with Godfrey before he turned in. He seemed to me to be pale and bothered. I asked him what was the matter. He said he was all right, just a touch of a headache. I bade him good night and left him. Half an hour later, the porter tells me that a rough-looking man with a beard called with a note for Godfrey. He had not gone to bed, and the note was taken to his room. Godfrey read it and fell back in a chair. The porter was so scared that he was going to fetch me, but Godfrey stopped him, had a drink of water, and pulled himself together. Then he went downstairs, said a few words to the man who was waiting in the hall, and the two of them went off together. The last that the porter saw of them, they were almost running down the street in the direction of the Strand. And this morning, Godfrey's room was empty. His bed had never been slept in, and his things were all just as I had seen them the night before. He had gone off at a moment's notice with a stranger, and no word has come from him since. I don't believe he will ever come back. He was a sportsman, was Godfrey, down to his marrow, and he wouldn't have stopped his training and let in his skipper if it were not for some cause that was too strong for him. No, I feel as if he were gone for good, and we should never see him again.
What did you do?
I wired to Cambridge to learn if anything had been heard of him there. I've had an answer. No one has seen him.
Could he have got back to Cambridge?
Yes, there is a late train, 11:15.
But so far as you can ascertain, he did not take it.
No, he has not been seen.
What did you do next?
I wired to Lord Mount James.
Why to Lord Mount James?
Godfrey is an orphan, and Lord Mount James is his nearest relative, his uncle, I believe.
Indeed. This throws new light upon the matter. Lord Mount James is one of the richest men in England.
So I've heard Godfrey say.
And your friend was closely related.
Yes, he was his heir, and the old boy is nearly 80, cram full of gout, too. He never allowed Godfrey a shilling in his life, or he is an absolute miser. But it will all come to him right enough.
Have you heard from Lord Mount James?
No.
What motive could your friend have in going to Lord Mount James?
Well, something was worrying him the night before, and if it was to do with money, it is possible that he would make it for his nearest relative, who had so much of it, though, from all I have heard, he would not have much chance of getting it. Godfrey was not fond of the old man. He would not go if he could help it.
Well, we can soon determine that. If your friend was going to his relative, Lord Mount James, you have then to explain the visit of this rough-looking fellow at so late an hour, and the agitation that was caused by his coming.
I can make nothing of it.
Well, I've a clear day, and I shall be happy to look into the matter. I should strongly recommend you to make your preparations for your match without reference to this young gentleman. It must, as you say, have been an overpowering necessity which tore him away in such a fashion. And the very same necessity is likely to hold him away. Let us step round together to the hotel and see if the porter can throw any fresh light upon the matter.
And with that, we come to the end of our first episode, as Holmes agrees to take up the case of the missing three-quarter. What could have led Staunton to make such a sudden departure from his hotel before a vital game? Might his position as the heir of the vastly wealthy miser Lord Mount James have played a role in his sudden disappearance? What will Holmes discover when he travels to Staunton's hotel to question the porter? Find out tomorrow evening here on BeFM Drama as we bring you part 2 in our 5-part adaptation of The Missing Three-Quarter.